Welcome to First Bite, the Pride of Detroit's preview podcast for prideofdetroit.com. But instead of previewing the upcoming week, we have moved to the offseason. We want to talk general manager candidates, head coaching candidates, all that sort of fun stuff. My name is Jeremy Reisman. I am the managing editor over at Pride of Detroit and your co-host for First Bite. With me, as always, Ryan Matthews. Ryan, how are we doing today?
I'm doing great, but I can't believe we didn't call an audible. Dalvin Cook is out. The Lions stand a chance.
Stop it.
Hurrah, hurrah.
No, it's going to be an Amir Abdullah show, and he's going to show us up. And there's your preview. We're done with it.
I'm 100% here for a Amir Abdullah revenge game.
All right, so there was news late last week, that the Lions have a brand new general manager candidate that no one really was talking about. One that's kind of a name that there isn't a ton of info out there. So I wanted to dig right into it, and that's Brad Holmes, the director of college scouting for the Rams. He's had that position since 2013, and we have a special guest to talk about him and give us a kind of background based on his time covering the Rams. That's our good friend now good friend, I should say, Vincent Bonsignore, over the beat writer for the Raiders now over at the Las Vegas Review-Journal, but spent decades in LA covering the Rams. Vinny, thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys. Happy New Year to everybody.
Happy New Year to you as well. The reason I reached out to you is because you had a really, really interesting article in The Athletic where it sounded like you had a lot of backroom access there, entitled Inside the Rams Draft Process, the Most In-Depth System in the NFL, where you interviewed Holmes amongst a ton of people in that organization. Before we get into Holmes at all, what makes the Rams draft process so in-depth? Like, why is that something that's so interesting and so unique and has obviously shown the Rams a lot of success in recent years?
Yeah, and, keep in mind they haven't had a first-round pick since 2016 with Jared Goff. They gave up, draft picks to go up to the top of the draft to go get him. They've traded away first-round picks in the Jalen Ramsey trade, among others. When you look at the Rams drafts, especially post 2016, they've been getting it done and bringing in high quality players beyond the first round, and I think that's a testament to their organization. There's a lot of bright minds in that front office and in the office that Les Snead, their general manager, is the leader of. Brad Holmes included. He's a trusted lieutenant with a big voice in the process. There's a lot of respect and teamwork in that process and in that front office. And allowing people to have ideas, and I'll just tell a quick story. I remember, this filters down throughout that organization, but I remember talking to some offensive linemen about their conversations with Sean McVay and how Sean McVay and their offensive line coach, Aaron Cromer, give these players a seat at the table in terms of the process and talking and articulating and picking their brain and a voice, basically. And I remember saying, I believe it was Rob Havenstein, or maybe it was Andrew Whitworth. It was along the lines of, well, shouldn't that be the case everywhere? Shouldn't the players be a process and coaches and front office want and value your opinion? And it was one of those slap on the back. You're so naive, Vinny. No, it's not always that case there. It should be, but it isn't always the case from organization to organization. But that's something that the Rams preach from the top down. As a result, somebody as bright and as capable as a Brad Holmes has a voice in the process, and a big voice in the process. And I think throughout, because of that organization, because of that willingness to listen and be open-minded and kind of check the ego at the door, you end up with positive drafts, even though you don't have first-round picks.
Yeah, that's a lot of that's a lot of goodwill, I think, that you build up, especially when you become a voice that's that big in an organization that, like you said, without many first round picks to make the kind of selections that they have made, with Brad Holmes being the director of college scouting since 2013. Vinny, if you could maybe provide a little bit more insight into his role in terms of some of the players that he's hit on. I think the biggest one is probably Aaron Donald. And that's a name that definitely sends chills down Lions fans' spines, because that's that's a touchy subject with us. But
The one that got
can you
away.
elaborate? Yeah, the one that got away. Could you elaborate a little bit more on maybe Brad Holmes and maybe even what he is like? His role specifically within that organization.
Yeah, well, he's the head of the department, college scouting. So he runs that department, and obviously he's got an army of scouts that work under him, and their draft process goes back to. They're already working on the draft process, obviously, but it really gets underway in terms of scouting the next wave in training camp. And by the time guys get to training camp, scouts they have their organizational meetings during training camp. That's when scouts get their walking orders of where they're going to be and who the priorities are and who the top players are. And then each of those scouts fans out across the country, covering their area of the country, including Brad Holmes. But one of the things that he does is they call it, I forget the exact term, but anyway, it's when somebody likes somebody or really like somebody, they want to get other eyeballs on them. And when I'm saying this is during the course of the college football season. So they have basically a double cover where somebody over the top of that scout now comes in and checks it out as well, to get eyeballs on the player themselves, because obviously one scout can't go see everybody. That's impossible in the course of the season. So he'll come in, as coverage to take a look at somebody that, the guys are taking a look at. And in the case of Aaron Donald, that's another case of, communication and everyone feeling comfortable to voice their opinion. It was a lower level scout who was cutting up film of Pitt and that area of the country. And he kept seeing, Aaron Donald just making play after play after play. And, it was one of those, hey guys, I just want to let you know there's this guy at Pittsburgh, that this guy's pretty good, and so it kind of evolved from there. The passion that the Rams had for Aaron Donald, and then that continued at the Senior Bowl where he just blew up the Senior Bowl. Unfortunately for them, the teams ahead of them. And keep in mind, they had the second pick in the draft that year, and they drafted a tackle from Auburn with the second pick who just kind of flamed out. But I think Aaron was, the 13th pick or 14th pick, somewhere along there in that draft, and he was still there, kind of inexplicably when you look back at it now. And the Rams got their guy, but it was teamwork. It literally sometimes comes down to that. Not to say that Aaron Donald was a unknown or anything like that. Obviously, he was a first-round pick. But this lower-level scout who kind of fell in love with him, just cutting up film, and that's all his job was to cut up film to get it to people like Brad Holmes and other people like that. And he just made a point, you guys have to see this guy, Aaron Donald, at Pitt, and that's kind of where it really started their connection to him.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting story, and you kind of mentioned how the whole top-down approach where everyone's doing their job, everyone is kind of staying out of each other's way and letting everyone do their own job. That's something that Chris Spielman specifically talked about, what he wanted to build here in Detroit. Guys that can hire smart people around them and trust them to do their own job instead of having that, like you said, checking your ego at the door, that sort of thing, which kind of leads me into my next question. Who's Brad Holmes as a person? There's so little information out there about him. You put out a tweet recently calling him emotionally intelligent, great listener, detailed, patient. Can you expand on that? What do you know about him as a person?
Yeah, definitely all of those things. A true gentleman, there's no question about that. But somebody that when you sit down and talk to him, you understand he is where he is. And to check the ego at the door, type of a characterization. If you think about it, you haven't heard much about him. If you're a Ram fan, you know who he is. And it's in the NFL. Obviously, people know who Brad Holmes is. He's definitely on the Lions' radar in a strong way. But I think that the fact that he's not that well known almost speaks to something that's very appealing about him. And he everyone has an ego, obviously, but it's where he's tooting his own horn, or he's trying to make it about him, or he's getting the name out there. Not that there's anything necessarily wrong with that, but there are people who do that, and their name gets out there, and the name recognition starts to circulate above just the normal level of the NFL, where obviously you should be known. So I think that he does a good job of just doing his job really quietly, well, and really outstandingly, but quietly. And I think that that's a positive attribute in today's world, where people are pushing and shoving their way to the top sometimes, maybe not always deservingly so. A guy like Brad Holmes has been able to fly under the radar in the national kind of a way, but do a tremendous job. If you look at that Rams roster, they're able to, again, not recreate themselves, but replenish themselves with some high-priced players on that team. And that's the other thing to keep in mind. When you're building a championship caliber team and you have, you're extended in a big way on your quarterback, your defensive tackle, Ramsey has a big contract. There's Robert Woods now has a pretty big deal. They pay the guys that they value. Sometimes you have to end up walking away from somebody that you really like, but you just don't have enough money under the cap to be able to sign that player. Corey Littleton comes to mind, but you can do that more confidently because behind the scenes, you're drafting and developing guys that maybe the whole world doesn't know, but pretty soon they're going to go, hey, who's that guy? Well, he's been on the roster for about a year or 2 years, kind of slowly working his way into the mix, and is ready to step up when you move on from a veteran that, because of the salary cap, you have to. Corey Littleton is a perfect example. He was a undrafted free agent in 2016, and at the time, Alec Ogletree was a very productive guy, middle linebacker, inside linebacker that was, 90 plus tackles every year. And they had just re-signed him to a new contract, but because of other priorities, it was, hey, we may have to move on from Alec. What are we going to do if we do that? And there's Corey Littleton waiting in the wings, and I remember their linebacker coach Joe Barry telling me, Sean McVay calls him up and says, hey, we're thinking about moving on from Alec Ogletree. Do we have coverage? Are we going to be okay if we do that? Heck yes. Corey Littleton's here. He's going to be able to get the job done. You got my word on that. And that's testament to not just Joe Barry and the defensive coordinator at the time, Wade Phillips, developing Corey Littleton, but Corey Littleton just being there in the first place. And that goes all the way to, Les Snead and Brad Holmes and their staffs and being able to find those diamonds in the rough.
Joe Barry, by the way, a name that Lions fans are probably pretty familiar with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an awesome picture you paint there, Vinny. The thing that I would like you to maybe even get a little bit more in depth on is, and I know it's a little bit difficult just because he's the director of college scouting, right? So he's beneath, he's a little bit buried underneath, Les Snead and either Taylor Morton, Brian Sanders, these other guys, but you bring up this idea of like it's a really delicate dance that he has to play in terms of getting an undrafted free agent like Corey Littleton or playing with these draft picks that aren't necessarily first round draft picks and trying to seek out certain players. So can you maybe paint a little picture for Lions fans as to like what kind of players does he value? I mean, is character a really big component? Maybe speed versus strength? Is he really tuned into analytics? Can you kind of paint the picture of who Brad Holmes is as a talent evaluator?
Well, and as it's been expressed to me, all of those play a role in that. Obviously, character is a huge component of what the Rams, have tried to build. And I know that it's a cliche. Blah blah blah. Good character guys. Well, it's important, and it's not just a cliche, and it's not just throwing that word out there. It's a big part of this, and I think the Rams have built a strong culture because of that. The hard line that they draw on high character players, and if you look at that roster, it's filled with them. And I think that the work that the Rams do, and Brad Holmes is a huge part of that, with the back checks and the vetting. And the understanding of who the person is that they're targeting and want to bring into their building. they do draw a hard line. And I'll say this: I can remember a couple of drafts where, how like we're looking at things from our own eyes, looking at tape. Oh wow, this guy's so great. Where does he fit on your board? He's not on our board. Well, why not? He's just not on our board. And you realize that there were some character flaws that they just, even though the production, based on just what I'm watching, looked pretty reasonable and NFL caliber. It didn't matter. That player was not on their draft board, and they weren't going to touch him, and they moved, and so he's off the board. And and I think that's important because it's not just who you bring in, but also what you avoid. And what you don't bring in, and because that can clutter things, and that can one bad apple, and all of a sudden the whole thing is toppling over. And so I think Brad Holmes, when you're talking about what kind of player he will pound the door for, or what he prefers, that type of thing. If that's the question, I think character obviously comes into play. Obviously, you have to play, but also this is really important. There's a lot of synergy between the head coach and the coaching staff, and not just Sean McVay, but their offensive coordinator and Aaron Cromer, the offensive line coach. There's a lot of synergy in terms of what the coaching staff is articulating to the front office, Les Snead and his group, and Brad Holmes and his group on, hey, this is the type of system that we run. This is the kind of scheme that we run. If all else, this is what we need. These are the type of players that we need. And so when the coaches are expressing and articulating those attributes that they're looking for to fit whatever it is that they're doing schematically, the ability of Brad Holmes and his staff to now process that is very important, because now it kind of narrows what they're looking for. To fit what they're doing, offensively or defensively. And I think the important part of that is that synergy that I'm talking about. It's again, checking your ego at the door. It's being open to not thinking you know it all, and allowing your coach and your staff and your position coaches to really have a voice in that as well. And I think that that's really important, because it builds trust. You're not just thinking that you have to do it all or can do it all. You're listening to the coaches and what their wants and needs are, and then you're formulating your plan, based on that. So, long-winded answer. It's kind of a combination of everything in terms of the players that he kind of prefers, but there's a big part of the skill set that's being articulated to him from the coaching staff.
All right, last question before we head to our first break. I kind of find it interesting that he's kind of at the top of some of these lists when you consider how deep that Rams bench is in terms of player personnel people. So, why do you think he's potentially getting more opportunities over a guy like Taylor Morton, their senior personnel advisor, and someone you listed as the right-hand man to Les Snead, or Brian Zanders, a former GM who spent some time with the Lions before, and a very well-respected mind? So why do you think Brad Holmes is maybe jumping them in order a little bit here?
Well, I think that people are looking at this Rams roster, and let's back this up a couple of years ago when the Rams made the trades for Marcus Peters and Aqib Talib. And I remember the national assumption was they're going all in. It's now or never.
Yeah.
And they're mortgaging their future. That sort of thing, and that kind of a narrative. And it was always, just in my reporting and, what it was always expressed to me, and I found this fairly obvious covering the team, but it was anything but. It was really a confidence level in that staff to, hey, we're going to extend ourselves maybe with these first round picks and these high draft picks to go get guys right now. But we're doing that because we believe that we could go find talent beyond just that first round. We have confidence that our staff is going to be able to still do the job even without those big first round picks. So that was the inner confidence in the building, and obviously that's that's come to fruition. You look at this roster and how well they've played in spite of giving away all kinds of quote unquote first round picks. But on the flip side, I think that now when people are starting to look at how are the Rams doing this without first round picks and having high priced players like Jared Goff and Aaron Donald, how are they building a playoff caliber roster around all these guys and not really missing a beat? And you start having to, I'm sure like that's when, well, they have a great staff that's putting great players into the pipeline, and who's responsible for that, or who's a big part of that? And Brad Holmes is a big part of that. And so that's how you earn your respect. And now I think teams are saying, maybe this is somebody that we need to come in and talk to, and see if maybe he's the right fit for this job. Because really, when you think about it, what makes a successful football team? Obviously, it's top down leadership. It's a great coach. It's a great general manager. It's a great, scouting staff and all that. But the bottom line is bringing in talent. You need talented players. The more talented a team is, the better chance you are going to have to win. And how do you do that? How do you go about building a great roster? Well, it's not just hitting the obvious ones in the first round. It's second and third and fourth and fifth. It's guys that you're bringing in as undrafted free agents. It's guys like Austin Blythe, who was cut by the Indianapolis Colts, and had to play guard a little bit out of necessity, which is his second position. Now he's a center and doing pretty well. He's one of the last I checked, he was top 10 center, in the NFL by Pro Football Focus. It's guys like that. It's guys like David Edwards, a fourth or fifth round pick from Wisconsin that kind of fell in the draft. Now he's one of their starting guards. It's guys like that. And so I think, as teams are starting to look at their situations and, why isn't our roster, why don't we have depth? Why don't we have, that's what we're looking for. Talent is the key. And so I think that people are recognizing the role that Brad Holmes has had in being able to replenish this roster, even without premium picks in some cases. And so he's rightfully landed on the radar as a result of that.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about something that you tweeted out yesterday that should be of very big interest to Lions fans. And then we're going to talk about some of maybe the concerns about Brad Holmes, because there's no perfect candidate out there. I'm sure there are some things that should draw some concerns, and we'll talk about them when we come back on First Bite, our preview podcast. All right, just going to talk to our live audience here really, really quick. Simon Krolik, J-Bro, thank you for being here. Nick Slick, thank you for being here. Mike Lowe, thank you for being here. And our good friend Jonathan Blevins with the 8-month subscription to the channel. Appreciate you, buddy. Let's answer this question during the break. Matt has an interesting question, and we'll get a little bit into it when we're back on air, so to speak. But he says, I'm really into this guy. How many places has he been just with the Rams? Yes, that is. He's been with the Rams his whole 18-year career. Who are some head coaching candidates if he were to be hired? Do you have any sort of insight into that, Vinny?
That's a really good question. Well, I would imagine that their offensive coordinator would be a big on the list, but he has so many. He's very well known in the NFL, and he's got a lot of connections in the NFL. So I'm sure he's built an army of friends. So to get into like who it might be at this point would be premature. I'm sure he's got a short list in his head. Yeah. As do the Lions, I'm sure. And I'm sure that that's going to be a combination of Brad or whoever the general manager is, and the Lions, getting that figured out. So I'm not sure, that, and I'm not sure it's always healthy to give the general manager that pick as far as the head coach. When you look at McVay and Les Snead, Les Snead preceded Sean McVay, and fortunately they hit it right off and became really close and alike thinkers, so that worked out. But I would think that the Lions will gauge whoever the general manager is in terms of what their preference, but recommendations would be for a head coach. But I think that's going to be a combination, yeah. And I'm not so sure the new general manager is going to be in charge of that.
I think that's probably accurate. I think you're right. I think they'll be asked. I mean, there are a lot of kind of duo packages that we've talked about a lot, like, Thomas Dimitrov has been with Rick Smith before and things like that. But, yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think at this point they're running both searches right now, even though they haven't, done a ton of head coaching interviews or any, it sounds like. But yeah, I think you're on the right line of thinking there.
And real quick, I said offensive coordinator. I meant defensive coordinator for the Rams. That's Brandon Staley, who is quickly rising to a level of recognition with the work that he's done, and he's been described in pretty high terms to me with some of the people that he's working with right now. So I have a feeling that he's going to be cracked that door pretty quickly, and so that's a guy that if I'm Brad Holmes, I would imagine, I can't put words in his mouth whatsoever, but I would imagine Brandon Staley would be somebody that he's obviously aware of.
Cool. All right, I think we're going to get right back into it. So give me a couple seconds of a silence here. We'll jump right back into it. I'm probably going to ask you a very similar question to that, so my apologies for making you have to answer it twice.
No worries.
And we are back on First Bite talking about Lions general manager candidate Brad Holmes, the current Rams director of college scouting. We're here with Vinny Bonsignore, the Raiders beat writer for Las Vegas Review-Journal, but he's been on the Los Angeles beat for plenty of years before that. I want to get right to it. Yesterday, which we're recording this on Wednesday, Tuesday, you tweeted out that it's your understanding that the Lions' interest in Brad Holmes is serious. Now, I'm not going to tell you to out your source or anything, but can you give us any more detail there into why Lions fans should be a little more in tune to this guy, maybe more so than some of the other candidates?
Yeah, he's how it's been described to me is serious, and that's not to say that he's going to be the guy. I'm sure there's some serious candidates, but I think that he's the feedback that I've gotten is that throughout this initial process, he's emerged as a serious candidate. So that's not to say that he's going to get the job. I'm not really privy on who else they've really talked to and who else has resonated with them. But what I do know is Brad Holmes has.
All right, I think maybe now we should transition to some things, some concerns that we have of Brad Holmes. I guess the first thing would just be to straight up ask you: is there anything about the Rams drafting in the past few years, dating us all the way back to 2013 when he became the director of college scouting? Is there any consistent mistakes they've made? Anything that maybe fans have been upset about? Has he been more of an offensive guy, defensive guy, and any signs of struggle there? Because it sounds like you've painted a pretty nice picture, and obviously since McVay has taken over, it has been a pretty nice picture over there in LA. But any weak spots there necessarily?
Obviously you're going to miss on guys here or there, but I look at guys like John Johnson, who kind of came out of nowhere as a third round pick. I remember that year, it was 2017, I believe it was, and Wade Phillips was defensive coordinator, and they draft John Johnson in the third round from Boston College. Okay, training camp comes. John has I forget what kind of injury it was. It was like a quad or a hamstring or something. So we didn't get a chance to see him in training camp. And I remember him telling me, I was literally having nightmares that I was going to be the highest drafted player that never made it and never stepped a foot. He goes, I just felt like I was falling behind because I couldn't get out there and play. So he literally had those worries. But it was anything but. And about 3 games into the season, and this was, by the time training camp was over, in practice, we get to see maybe the first 20 minutes, the first half hour, but then it's, we're out, they're game planning and they're doing their thing. So we really didn't get a chance as reporters and observers to see John Johnson very much. Come around the third game of the year, they literally, maybe a couple of days before a game, I want to say it was Washington, they literally cut their starting safety, and we're all like, what's going on? And and John Johnson's going to be the starter, a guy that nobody had ever really seen. I think he had a pick 6. I know he had an interception his first game. It might have been a pick 6. But from day one, this dude was a stud, and now he's like the second ranked safety in the NFL. I'm not so sure that they're going to be able to re-sign him. By the way, if Brad Holmes becomes a general manager, keep an eye on John Johnson. That you can connect some dots there if there's a desire from John Johnson's part. But it's guys like that, guys like Sebastian Joseph Day, their starting nose tackle from Rutgers, who was, fifth round pick or so. It's Joe Noteboom. It's guys that they've been able to get starting quality play from the third round on. And it's Cooper Kupp. I'm sure you read the story, so you know the story about the celebration that the Rams had when Cooper ran his, what was it, a 4.6, I think it was, in the 40. Mm-hmm. Eric, just so your listeners will know, Kupp is really a really good example. They loved him in college, all right? So there's no question that they loved him in college. They get to the Senior Bowl, and he just blows up in the Senior Bowl. He's having tremendous practices. I'm not sure what he did in the game, but nobody cares about that. It was what he was doing in practices. And the Rams were like, we love this guy. And there was a technology that the Senior Bowl was utilizing to track players as far as how fast they were playing, not so much directly running, like in the 40, but just playing, all right? And so after we'll get to that in a second. But the Rams loved this guy. They went to go check on him. They went and visited him a bunch of times. They built a good relationship with him. Sean McVay talked to him at the combine, and so when he ran his, and they were in love with him. They wanted him, period. And so when he ran his 4.6, 4.7 40 at the combine, they were, I'm not sure how literally they were cracking open champagne bottles, but they were celebrating because they knew that time was going to scare people away. And they were able to sit patiently and get him in the third round, and tremendous value in the third round because they knew what a player he was about the speed. The postscript to that is they went back and looked at that technology that I was talking about, which measures on-field speed. And through the technology, what they were seeing was reaffirmed because in that Senior Bowl, I think it was the 2017 Senior Bowl, he was the fastest player in football speed, when measured by playing. And so he wasn't so great in the straight 40, but nobody runs a straight 40 in football. Right. But he was tremendous in just getting around and moving around and all the measurables that you're looking for a wide receiver, sans, the 4.2 kind of speed. So that's a guy that, that if I'm looking at a Brad Holmes, he's a prime example of Brad Holmes, and there's many others, John Johnson included. So, that's that's what one of to me his strong attribute is being able to find, along with his staff, those kind of players.
Yeah, I think Lions fans would be very happy to swap out one Boston College safety for another Boston College safety that's currently on the Lions roster, Vinny. Will Harris has not returned the same kind of dividends as John Johnson has this early in his career. But, you bring up a lot of really good stuff, Vinny, and we appreciate that. The focus on analytics and things like that, I think that's really going to excite Lions fans. The question, the last question I have for you is, just because he's spent so long on the director of college scouting, on that side of the football, do you think that he'll be able to, and spending his entire time with the Rams, will he be ready to put together a pro personnel side, like bring them from LA, or do you think he's well connected enough to reach out to other members in the NFL and bring some guys along with him in that way?
Yeah, no question. And, especially when you're out on the road and doing this, year round where you're scouting and you're around other people who do what you do, you're bound to make friends. You're bound to forge relationships. You're bound to, and knowing Brad Holmes, I'm sure that in his mind, he's probably been sizing people up. That's what you should be doing. Just in case, if I get my chance as a general manager, you want to be able to have a scouting report of, other staff members in your head. You're probably compiling that kind of a list. So knowing Brad Holmes, I would figure that he's has an idea of who he would like to bring in. Obviously, because he hasn't done that before, there's always going to be that concern.
Sure.
But he's been around. He's part of a process that's built this roster. And you look at the guys like Blythe, who they brought in, and Austin Corbett, a guard that they traded for with the Browns, who was high on their list, in the draft, but he went high in the second round, so they weren't able to get him. But then the Browns inexplicably gave up on him, and they swooped in with a trade to get him for, I think, a fourth or fifth round pick. It's guys like that his staff has input in that because the last time anyone really saw him play was in college at Nevada. So you have to be, if you're Les Snead, you're talking to Brad Holmes and his staff about this guy and trying to go down on players like that. So yeah, it's always going to be a concern when somebody hasn't done anything before officially. But if you know Brad Holmes, you have a sense that he's going to be meticulous. He's going to be thoughtful about it. He's going to build a strong staff. And I'd be surprised if that part of the equation got the best of him. I would think that it would be the opposite of that. I think that he would be able to handle it and make that segue to being a general manager, because a lot of it is your staff. It's the voice that you give them. It's the respect that you give them. It's understanding and identifying strong candidates to be a part of your group. And I think that's it more than anything. Now, of course, it'll come down to now you're making decisions. Obviously you have to run it through your owner and whoever is on top of him. And some of that is just making a strong case for what your plan is and what your idea is and why is, and this is the reason why we should do this. But he's no wallflower by any stretch of the imagination. He's going to get his point across. He does it in a very classy way, but you get the point. So some people are they get up on the table and smash around and and make it, do it voicefully and forcefully. Other guys just do it a little bit more thoughtfully and prudently, and I think he probably falls into that category a little bit more. But the point gets across, and I think that. So long answer short, I think that he'd be fine in that. There is a little bit of a concern because he hasn't done it before, but I'd be shocked if he wasn't able to be strong in that area, making that switch.
Yeah, Vinny, I lied. One last question, and it's real quick. I want you to be team president CEO because Brad Holmes has drawn interest from other teams. I know the Atlanta Falcons interested in him as well. If you are Brad Holmes, Atlanta Falcons or Detroit Lions, which situation seems better built for Brad Holmes?
Well, I want to say the last time I talked to him, I think he lives in Atlanta.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh,
yeah,
dang.
Yeah. It should be. I think he's based in Atlanta or somewhere in that because he's from North Carolina.
That's a big scouting hub too, right? It's really easy to get everywhere.
That helps. Although you got the Big Ten in Michigan. There's a lot of talent there, but if he still lives in Atlanta, and I want to say, I want to put some wrong information out there, but I believe that's where.
You're right,
yeah. Obviously, that could be a consideration for him and his family, but I think that whoever, but I also think that there's serious interest, on his part, with the Lions as well. So it's not like he would decline that or something like that. It is a proud franchise. I know that they've been on hard times, but there's no reason why the Lions shouldn't be a viable team with the right kind of leadership. And I think Brad Holmes is fits that. I think that he'd be a tremendous asset and a great face for that part of the operation. But I couldn't predict, like, if everything was equal and he had job offers for multiple teams, what would ultimately be the deciding factor. But I guess if you're the Lions and you want him, go get him.
Yeah.
make it known.
Exactly, yeah. And they might have to do that with him or Rick Smith, because both of them, I think, I think the Falcons have a leg up on the Lions, and just in terms of whether it's location or people that they already know inside the organization. But yeah, if he's your guy, go get him, make him an offer he can't refuse, that sort of stuff.
Exactly.
Vinny, awesome information. I appreciate your time here. Before we let you go here, the floor is yours to promote whatever you want, whether it's your Vegas stuff, maybe if there's some Rams stuff that Lions fans are going to be interested in seeing, let us know, and where can they find you on Twitter and all that good stuff.
Yeah, at Vinny Bonsignore on Twitter. If as far as the Rams go, it's been a little while, about a year and a half, but all my stuff, I'm sure, is still on The Athletic, so just type my name in. There. But currently, the Las Vegas Review-Journal, VegasNation.com, covering this unusual move for the Raiders from Oakland to Las Vegas without any fans, unfortunately. But, and much like the Lions, they're trying to get that corner turned and trying to get this thing straightened out and headed in the right direction. And so it makes for an interesting story with Raider fans and Raider Nation. It's frustrating and disappointing right now, but I do think that for them, brighter days are ahead. Just needs a little bit more patience, which is hard to come by these days.
Yeah, no kidding. Vinny, thanks again for your time. Awesome stuff. We might talk up with you again if Brad Holmes ends up being their guy. We'll probably reach out to you again to hear more stories, because you had a bunch of them, and we appreciate your time.
Absolutely, guys. Have a good one, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Thanks to everybody for listening. We will catch you again after the end of the Lions 2020 season, which comes to an end against the Minnesota Vikings Sunday night. We'll be here right here live on Twitch and YouTube, 7 p.m. Eastern on Sunday. But until then, it's chaos. Be kind, everybody.
Call recording off.
All right. We're still technically live, Vinny, but you are free to go. Thank you again for your time. Appreciate everything you had to say, and I have to say you got me a little bit more excited about Brad Holmes.
He's a good guy, and I think you do a really good job. And that's not just I would tell you the other way if it wasn't the case. So, but anyway, reach out anytime. Happy to help.
Appreciate that, man.
Yeah,
Thanks so much.
You're the man, dude. Yeah, great stories. Have an awesome New Year, man.
All right, you too. Take care, guys.
Thanks.
Yep.
All right, chat. I'm willing to stick around for a little bit here. I don't know, Ryan, what your deal is.
I'll talk.
You'll talk? Okay, cool.
I'll give the people what they want.
Okay. D. Hubert, sounds like it's your birthday. Happy birthday, buddy. Hopefully you're still around. Let's see. There were a couple. Joshua Mercer is not impressed with the Rams drafting simply because of Jared Goff, which, okay. Fair. Maybe fair, maybe a little unfair. Let's quickly talk before we get into more questions. I mean, I really tried to dig into some of like the big questions about him at the end, and like he immediately turned it into a positive. So what are your thoughts? Are you kind of hyped on this guy now a little bit?
I'm definitely interested in him.
Yeah,
for sure. I think I think what was really telling, what Vinny said, and it's not going to be on the podcast, so good thing that y'all tuned into Twitch. But like, if he had bad things to say about Brad Holmes, it sounds like he would have been willing to say him. But
right. He
did not have one bad thing to say about him. He called him thoughtful. He, had all these great anecdotal stories. There's a really interesting quote I have here. From Brad Holmes. It was on Yahoo Sports.
Yeah,
Eric Edholm.
Yeah, I did a great interview with Eric Edholm.
Yeah.
That's like,
yeah.
Vincent and Eric Edholm are the only information I had on Brad Holmes. So I was going to reach out to one or the other, and I just picked the local beat guy.
Yeah. So, but I think that this would, if he brought this kind of energy and he brought this to Chris Spielman, I think Chris Spielman would be ready to, run through a wall for him. But he says, so I was a scouting assistant and I tried to be the best scouting assistant. I wanted to get the coffee the fastest. I wanted to make the best profile tape possible and all of that. And when I was an area scout, I wanted to be the best at that. So I never really looked ahead. And he talks about how opportunities, all of them are blessings, have landed on me. And I just kind of earned my way to where I am now. So it just sounds like he's a guy who, like, no matter what role he was in, he wanted to do. I mean, he started out as a public relations intern, and he was like, I want to get into scouting. So then he got into scouting a year later and just worked his way up from, fetching the coffee to cutting the tape to being the director of college scouting. And, when you do look at that Rams roster, they've had to make the most of their draft picks. And for a team that has been competitive and has been, the NFC West might very well be the most competitive division in football.
Sure.
And for the Rams to consistently be at the top, I think the one thing that Vinny said that really stuck out to me and made me go, you know what, that's really interesting. It's a different perspective when he talked about, the move to get Aqib Talib and Marcus Peter and people on the outside viewing that as, the Rams are pushing their chips all in right now. And it's like, he's like, no, what that is it's a vote of confidence for the fact that we don't need first round picks. We're going to go out and get like these big guys like Aqib Talib, Jalen Ramsey. We're going to, and we're going to pay guys like Aaron Donald to stick around. We're going to pay guys like Todd Gurley, even though it comes back to bite them. They've been able to survive and they've been able to reinvent themselves, as Vinny said. And I think that was a really interesting point and probably my biggest takeaway.
Yeah, definitely. I think that whole message of, the vote of confidence in your college scouting staff by getting rid of they literally haven't had a first round pick since 2016. It's crazy.
That's nuts.
I'm surprised in myself that I didn't bring up the fact that they did draft a running back in the first round under his watch. Good restraint on my part, I guess. By the way, Mrs. Ruby, thank you for the host and your judgmental egg eyes in the chat. Appreciate you. But yeah, no, I think really my only concern is just like he's too green. He's been under the same organization for 14 years. He hasn't been on the pro personnel side. He's been very kind of limited in his scope. But again, I think Vinny had some good answers for that as well, both on and off air, in that, saying, well, when you scout for 18 years, you tend to rub elbows with some people. You tend to develop relationships. You tend to know people by name and things like that. And, if he has to pluck some coaches or personnel people from the Rams staff, like, it's a pretty good organization to pull some people from. And I think they've done a good job on the pro side of things. So if he can pluck someone from there, that's fine. But yeah, like I certainly have far less concerns about him than I did going into, because it just, like I mentioned on the podcast, the fact that they were interviewing him at all, to me, was a good sign that they're being thorough. But I didn't necessarily take him serious as a candidate. And now I feel like maybe I do a little bit more. Yeah.
All good stuff. I'm trying to think of some other big takeaways that, I guess even from the sense that he was able to kind of like lead the charge and draft some players who immediately stepped in and made an impact when they needed help. Like when the Rams wanted to move on, like Vinny said, from Alec Ogletree. And it's like, are we ready to do this? And like, yeah, we got Corey Littleton. Or, the starting safety for the Rams when they decided to move on from him. And they're like, well, we got Johnson. So So that was another big takeaway for me.
Depth.
I miss
depth.
Yeah, depth is nice, right?
Yeah, right.
But I think those concerns are warranted. And Vinny, he even said there's no two ways of getting around that. Like, he just kind of has to prove that he can do the job. And of course, that's gonna have Lions fans kind of raise their eyebrows and be like, didn't we just hire that kind of guy? Didn't we just hire Bob Quinn, who was from one organization the entire time?
Sure.
So I can understand their hesitation with that. But again, like, folks, like, let's think about how many GMs or, potential GMs the Lions interviewed when they hired Bob Quinn. I think it was 3, right? So, the Lions are far past that number already. And more interviews to happen. So, that's a good sign.
And you're right in that this is going to turn some Lions fans away from him. My question is, will it turn the Lions away from him? Because we saw that internal memo from Sheila that said, like, we're looking for someone, who's both at the general manager and the coaching position that has experience. That's well versed in experience, and he's not necessarily that guy. So I think he's the kind of guy that might have to blow them away with their interview, and maybe he does. And again, the fact that they're interviewing shows that they're casting a wide net, and they're not necessarily making it a prerequisite that you've been a past GM or that you've even been, an assistant GM or on both the pro and college side of scouting. But
right, or else he wouldn't, step the foot in the door.
Right, exactly. But yeah, it is something that he's definitely still going to, I think, have to overcome in the interviewing process. And based on everything we heard today, maybe he can. Sounds like a very thoughtful, interesting, smart guy. And so, it's tough because you don't necessarily want someone to just win the job through their interview, because I think that's what Bob Quinn did. I mean, that's what's his name said, well, like, this is the best GM interview I've ever had. Hire this guy. Well, there needs to be a little bit more than that, but yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I don't. If you had to right now, and this is an impossible question because I can't answer it, but I'm hoping you can to cover for me. If you had to place them right now in the power rankings of the people that they've interviewed or will interview, again, they haven't interviewed Brad Holmes yet. They will reportedly. Where would you put him?
I'm gonna firmly put him below Dimitrov. I think Dimitrov is.
Mm-hmm. He's your dude.
He's not my dude, but I'm speaking from the Lions' perspective. I think that is. I mean, like you said, that internal memo is probably the biggest indicator that they want somebody who has that experience, and Dimitrov definitely does. Fontenot, I big on him.
Yep.
But a guy who pro personnel side of things, has some experience doing some other stuff, but has never been a general manager before.
Yeah, and the Lions' level of interest in him is still kind of up in the air. There hasn't been any reports that he's going to be interviewed, but I think really early in the process, he was one of the names that popped up.
Yeah. So, I think I'm getting to the point where, because we talked about this before and how we were both interested in getting somebody in that position who does have prior general manager experience.
Mm-hmm.
I think the more I'm hearing of people like Brad Holmes, of who's another, I mean, I guess the other candidates we have that we've interviewed, other people have been GMs before that, but I think I'm just getting more warm to the idea of not necessarily having that be the end all be all.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Rick Smith is still my guy, but I'm almost at a point where I'm like,
me too.
He's going to be the Falcons GM. I just, the more I hear rumors flowing in, and of course nothing's decided by now, and I'm not going to act like the Falcons have made that decision yet, but it just seems like a match that's bound to happen. I think every NFL insider is kind of predicting that to happen, but again, predictions, not reporting.
Right.
And so I think, like, well, if Rick Smith is gone, is this a decent, consolation prize? Yeah, I think I'd be okay with it.
Yeah, and you know what? I think that there's enough candidates out there, and I think the Lions are doing enough due diligence that I wouldn't mind if they swung and missed on their first guy because he goes somewhere else.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I wouldn't be so upset if the Falcons hire a GM first and it ends up being Rick Smith. I was going to say Thomas Dimitrov, but I'm sure he's not going back.
I don't think he's going back.
But I mean, I wouldn't be hurt in the same way that I was hurt when, like, Wisenhunt became the coach for the Chargers, right? Like, that the Lions didn't get their first guy, that, like, the Lions aren't like the prime destination or the first choice, or, that's why I kind of wanted to ask, like, Vinny's perspective to see, like, hey, like, if both those offers are on the table, like, who do you think? And obviously with Brad Holmes, like, his backyard being in Atlanta, that's a
factor. Let me catch up on chat real quick. Krolik mentions that Albert Breer predicted Ed Dodds to be the Lions' next GM. I did see that as well. Obviously, Ed Dodds hasn't really come into the conversation yet because he can't be interviewed yet until the end of the regular season. So, again, we might see things heat up considerably, and we'll try to keep up with this podcast as much as possible with that. Joshua says, I actually like that he wasn't a past GM because a past GM obviously got fired for some reason. True. Defensive player is key for this guy. Mrs. Ruby says, Luis came by and said Jeremy's mustache is amazing, and so the eyes were more at him. I just forgot you can't hear him. Fair enough. Side note, how bad was Jeff Fisher that the Rams went from terrible to competitive basically with the same roster and front office? That's a really good point, Torque and Gecko. And yeah, I think it's also important to remember that they weren't horrible under Jeff Fisher. Like they were 7-9, right? That's the meme. They were 7-9, right. Which as a Lions fan, that's an above average season. So
it's not going to cut it for Jeff Fisher. 7-9. That's
no.
7-9 bullshit.
Was the current regime even there for Goff? If we're talking about Brad Holmes, yes. Brad Holmes has been with the Rams for 18 years. He's been in the director of college scouting since 2013. So, yeah, Goff was drafted, 2016?
2016.
Yeah.
Yep. And 2014 was Aaron Donald draft, right?
Yes, that sounds right. Stevo says, Ed Dodds is the only GM candidate without experience I like. Ed Dodds is a good one. I haven't done a huge deep dive on him. Thanks, Mr. Ruby.
He's the sexy name.
He is.
He's like the sexiest name there is out there. And I know, like, he's just not, like, from all our accounts, did Albert Breer say anything like the Lions are going to schedule an interview with him or anything like that?
Just speculating.
So like that's why like I don't even want to like factor him into my power rankings yet. Like
right.
I don't want him to even be in my power rankings until the Lions express interest publicly.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with him.
Or something. Yeah.
All right, I think we're gonna probably wrap it up there. Before we go, I do have an announcement to make. If you haven't seen it on Pride of Detroit, tomorrow, New Year's Eve, if you don't have any plans or if you want to stop by before your plans kick in, 7 p.m. right here on Twitch and YouTube, we will be throwing a New Year's Eve party until the ball drops, until we hit 2021. We'll be doing karaoke on Twitch Sings. If you want to come join and sing with us, download Twitch Sings right now. It's being discontinued at the end of the year. 2021 Twitch Sings won't even work anymore. So all you have to do is download it for a day, uninstall it later. The Pride of Detroit staff has an obsession with karaoke, and so this is how we've liked to run our charity streams, which is the other part of this, is we're raising money for a charity as well, Feeding America, which I think is a really cool, we've benefited them before. Part of the very first charity drive that we had, which was kind of parallel with Kyle Kasky, was for something that was funded by Feeding America. They basically fund food banks across the world, or across the country, I should say. Feeding America, idiot. Anyways, obviously, we live in a country right now that has an enormous amount of wealth, and for people to be starving is a travesty. And obviously,
bullshit.
Yeah, it's nothing short of bullshit. Exactly. And obviously, there are a lot of people going through it right now with COVID, being out of jobs, all that sort of stuff. So I think we can support our brothers and sisters' most basic need of being able to eat. So there's a whole bunch of fun stuff that we'll be doing besides karaoke. Every $100 that we raise, I will be spinning the Wheel of Humiliation, which looks something like this. I get to do this. Wait, where's the spinny thing? Oh, right here. So in this instance, if I would eat a dog treat, there you go. I would eat out. So every $100 that we raise, I will spin that wheel and do something embarrassing, including I think pickle juice is on there. That's a new one. I hate pickles, so that one's gonna be miserable. Hot sauce shot. I got extra hot sauce this time, so enjoy that. Yeah, I don't know. There's going to be a whole bunch of fun stuff. And then if we hit $1,000, which is going to be our goal for the night, a modest goal, we've hit $1,000 in a night before, so I think we can do it. But short notice, not a ton of jobs here. I will do a cosplay on one of the next Pride of Detroit podcasts. And here's the fun thing about it. When you donate, you get to vote on what you want me to do. And so I will show you how it works really quick. So there's a link in chat, and it'll lead you to this page right here. And if you... Here, I'll just... So there's link in chat in Twitch. Let me throw it on YouTube really quick, but it'll lead you to this page right here. And you put in whatever donation amount, you put in your display amount. If you want to throw in a comment, you can throw a comment. I'll read it on air. And then you hit next, and here you go. These are your 4 options. However much money is raised towards each option, we'll decide which one I will do. And you can see we actually already got a $50 donation towards Rod and Burgundy as one of the options. The other options are Austin Powers, Macho Man Randy Savage, or Hulk Hogan. I found very good Halloween costumes for all these guys, and I will buy it and wear it during a new. Once the costume comes in, I'll do it for a Pride of Detroit podcast. And if we get bigger than that amount of donation, if we hit like 5,000 or something crazy, I'll throw something else crazy on there. But that's what we'll do.
If can you take a quick look at Slack?
Sure.
And your private messages.
Only one of those people doesn't have a mustache. Is that true? Who's the one that doesn't? Oh, Austin Powers, I guess. Yeah, that's true. Maybe I'll have to shave for that one. All right, what am I looking at here? Come on, computer.
You see the bottom left corner?
Yeah. What, these guys?
I'm downloading.
Oh,
Twitch
you're
things.
downloading Twitch things. Ah, nice. Excellent.
Yeah, I might have to make an appearance and sing my patented "Higher" or "Arms Wide Open" or "My Sacrifice."
You were rocking some Creed last time. I'm not gonna lie. I'm very excited about that. Joshua Mercer says, "I got $200 I got you for $200, Jeremy." Well, appreciate that. That'd be amazing if you could do that. You could. By the way, the whole thing is set up now. I would suggest waiting until tomorrow until we go live at 7 p.m. because then you'll get a little dono alert. Actually, I think I do have the dono alerts set right now, but it's always more fun to have it happen all at once so people see it and get excited and donate themselves. And yeah, it's going to be a heck of a fun time. I know I always have a heck of a fun time doing karaoke, hosting karaoke events. Unfortunately, we're going to have to figure out some other way to host some charity events in the future. But for now, we're going to have a hell of a time. I plan on losing my voice by the end of Thursday night. Yeah, I think that's all I got. Anything from you before we head out here?
No. That's the cap.
Okay. Let me see if I can use my fancy stream deck to host someone. I can, and there's someone I want to host. You guys might know him. POD Reno is streaming live. I think he's played some Valorant, so we're going to go over there. Say hi to our good friend who we miss here on the podcast, but obviously good friend of ours, smart dude. Head on over to Reno right now. Say something. You know him, Miss Ruby, that's right. And try to convince him to come tomorrow because he told me that he was a soft no for the karaoke event. So I want you all to raid him right now. Tell him he better show up tomorrow. And we will see you guys tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern for karaoke charity night. Be there, New Year's Eve. It's going to be a blast. See you later. All right, now's the awkward point where everyone on Twitch has moved over to that stream, but we're still streaming live on YouTube because I can't raid through YouTube. So everyone on YouTube, I appreciate you guys. I know sometimes I leave you guys out. I try not to. Love you guys. But you guys, we're going to be streaming on YouTube tomorrow too. So be there as well. Love you guys. We'll see you about 24 hours. Not too much more than that.